But randomness in battles is neglectable. So the 4 battle phases are just 2 phases in a trench coat. That is why day 1 is the most important day. We have Alexander the Great with 31 martial and 1000 levies versus Peter the Peasant with 1 martial and 1300 levies. Who do you think will win? But what if being at war would spawn an activity called War Council? Hello fellow data friends. Have a look at this battle. It's in the maneuver phase and the armies are somewhat equal in power. You can feel the tension. Will you win this important battle? You eagerly await the first days of combat. You see that the bar moves in your favor and you know you will win. You don't need to watch the rest of the battle unless there are reinforcements nearby. Wait, you might say, that's what the random battle rule is for. Yes, in theory, but randomness in battles is neglectable. I used the console and the ruler designer to set up 2 almost identical armies. Both sides only use levies, are commanded by the ruler of Martial 1 without any commander or dynasty bonuses. But one side has 1000 levies and the other has 1040 levies. I repeat that experiment 9 times. They roll different random rolls, so the battles all have different random seeds. And well, the bigger army won all 9 fights because they had just 40 extra levies. The smaller army can in theory still win through random luck, but they need to roll at least 5 battle advantage points higher consistently, which is unlikely. Of course, there are also random knight events, and some knights might be killed in battle. This can have a bigger impact than the random battle advantage rules, and the actual effect is hard to pinpoint. But in conclusion, randomness is neglectable in vanilla. There will be different preferences for the amount of accepted randomness between players. But everyone probably knows at least one story where some random event changed the outcome of the battle, like a stray arrow killing a king. Randomness in battles can be band-aided with a mod. Here I increased randomness and we can actually see the back and forth between both armies. But how much randomness would be decent? But just increasing randomness will not fix battles. It's a design problem. Currently there are 4 different battle phases: maneuvers phase, early battle phase, late battle phase and pursuit phase. Nothing actually happens in the maneuvers phase. The early and late battle phases are the same, except that you cannot retreat in the early battle phase. The pursuit phase is a distinct phase with its own mechanics. So the 4 battle phases are just 2 phases in a trench coat. This makes the first day of actual combat the most important day of the battle. Why is that so? For the sake of simplicity, let's assume that randomness, the man-at-arms counter mechanic and battle advantage does not exist. Then each army is just a sum of its parts, namely combined stats of attack and defense. Defense sounds fancy, but it's just hit points. Just think of a Pokemon battle. Each day, each army reduces the HP of the other army by 3% of its attack. It gets scaled by the HP the army has left. If an army has 50% HP, it does 50% damage. Army 1 will win the whole battle if it removes a higher percentage of HP from the other army on the first day. Example: Army 1 has 150 attack and defense. Army 2 has 100 attack and defense. So Army 1 has an advantage. On the first day of combat, Army 1 does 4.5 damage and Army 2 does 3 damage. So HP drops to 147 or 89% for Army 1 and to 95.5 points or percent for Army 2. Since attack scales with HP, also attack is reduced accordingly. So on day 2, Army 1 has an even bigger advantage. That is why day 1 is the most important day. You don't need the rest unless there are reinforcements nearby. It gets a bit more complicated with battle advantage, but in my example, Army 2 needs to do 4.5% of 150 HP to be even with Army 1. That's 6.75 points of damage instead of 3, so it needs 125% more damage. That's 62.5 battle advantage, just to be even. What about the other factors? I've already shown that randomness is neglectable. The man-at-arms counter mechanic can be impactful, but it changes nothing about the win the first day and you win the battle property. Because if you kill enemies faster, then you reduce the man-at-arms counter faster. CK2's combat system has its own flaws, but it has a nice and easy solution to the just win the first day problem. 2 distinct actual battle phases. Each unit has distinct battle values for skirmish and melee phases. This makes it so that an archer army will be powerful in the skirmish phase, but helpless in the melee phase. Vice versa for heavy infantry. This change in actual combat phases allows for different strategies and creates tension. Will enough heavy infantry survive the skirmish phase to actually matter? This would also make skirmishers actually viable. They are weak in general, but they can attack first. So I hope they will make the early battle phase actually distinct from the late battle phase. The 3 flanks system of the K2 is not actually needed, but it sure can make for a tense moment if you lose one flank first. It's just extra entertainment, which is good by itself, and you need more than just one good commander. Let's go back to the K3. We can get an estimation of the actual impact of battle advantage. It is explained in an old Reddit post of mine, which I linked in the description. If we calculate the formula for some values, we get the following results. 1 point of battle advantage is about the same as bringing 1% extra soldiers with the same average stats. But they are diminishing returns, because a lot of battle advantage will make your soldiers into glass cannons. As we can see, 30 points of battle advantage is the same as bringing 26.5% more soldiers. So I used the console and ruler designer for a new battle setup. We have Alexander the Great with 31 martial and 1000 levies versus Peter the Peasant with 1 martial and 1300 levies. Who do you think will win? We repeat the battle 9 times. And our Alexander the Great lost all battles. A 30% increase in soldiers is worth more than having a brilliant commander. It's the same for terrain bonuses. It's usually just a small modifier, but terrain can also affect combat width. If you hover over the relative power bar, you get also information about combat width. The base value is always half of the total soldiers participating, and then it gets modified by terrain. It's a nice system to have, but I also think it won't have much impact unless a small elite force will fight a big peasant army. Which will only happen if the player created Space Marines. But the player won't need the combat width advantage in this scenario. For the sake of completeness, I also created a mountain defense scenario. Its usual setup, and the combat width is 575. So, as long as the defender has more than 575 units, it doesn't matter that he has a numerical disadvantage. But again, just having a bit more soldiers is enough to overcome the mountain defense. Of course, having a bigger army should be an advantage, potentially a very big advantage. But everything else seems to pale in comparison with raw stats. I just hope Paradox will improve battles on a mechanical level. Last but not least, the link between warfare and the actual characters is too weak. Let's say my brother hates me with vengeance, has a claim on my throne and is in a faction. If I give him command of my whole army, he will obey my will. He will not have any funny ideas about using that army to become king himself. I can also exchange commanders at will. I can remove this duke as commander and replace him with a lowborn, and he will not be insulted. There's no trade-off, no real decision, just take the very best one. There's also no travel time for commanders, although I heard that the Prisoners of War mod adds such a mechanic. I never tested it myself, but it's linked in the description. But what if being at war would spawn an activity called War Council? The main activity would be to be appointed as the commander of the army. It's an honor to be the commander, and the lords will fight for it. As ruler, you can appoint anyone you want, but if you appoint a lowborn with a bad score, your vassals will be insulted. And if someone hates you, he will not attend your war council. Through the war council, you can also interact with other parts of your army. On the army camp, you can raise morale, and vassals can donate extra soldiers if they love the king. Here, you can set quality of equipment and weapons. You need to manage your supplies and baggage train. If the peasants like you, they will be supportive. They will help you with supplies and join your armies as volunteer. Or they might hinder you if they hate you. If you fight heathens, the church might support your efforts with money and blessings. Or they will be disappointed that you fight fellow Christians. I think this would improve the link between the actual characters in warfare in a nice and interesting way. It might give you more meaningful choices. Who will you appoint as a commander? Will the peasants support yet another war, or actually hinder you? Will the church be happy with your war target? And for crusades and jihads, there will be special Great War Councils. Everyone who joins the Great Holy War needs to attend the Great War Council. Depending on the success, the crusade gets a cohesion bonus or becomes just a huge mess. It could be epic. What do you think? What would you change in warfare? If you want to know how to make people happy by almost starving them in Victoria 3, click on the top video. Thanks a lot for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing.